Welcome to another week. I guess all of us, some of us anyway, are well into our week. Today I called the title Two for the Price of One. Why? Because there's really two distinct sections to today's presentation, as it were. There's going to be a reading from the Science of Mind magazine daily guides. However, before that, there's going to be a little introduction to religious science, because when I read today's reading, I realized that it is intended just for people who are already involved in religious science, or science of mind, if you like. The two terms are synonymous. So we're going to begin with that first part, which is a brief introduction. And I actually realized there's a book called What Religious Science Teaches. And I went to see if it was, I don't have it actually on my shelves back there, which is kind of surprising, or if I do, I can't find it. So I went on Amazon and I found out I could get it for 99 cents on the Kindle edition anyway. And as I said, it's called What Religious Science Teaches. And I'm trying to just increase the size of this a bit so I can read it easily. So rather than me start going into a formal explanation, this is Ernest Holmes wrote this book. He's the founder of Science of Mind, a religious science. As I said, they're synonymous. And this is what he says at the beginning of that book. And this is actually Amazon's summary of what he says. Is it verbatim? I don't know if Amazon messes with this or actually literally takes text out of the books and puts it on there, or maybe a combination of both. But anyway, this is for all of you who really are not all that familiar with what science of mind and religious science are. But it's also a good reminder for all of us who are familiar with it to get another insight into it. And this is what Ernest Holmes said. He says, religious science is not the personal opinion, nor is it a special revelation. It is the result of the best thought of the ages. It borrows much of its light from others, but in doing so, robs no one, for truth is universal. And I'm making it a bit bigger so it's easier to read. The Christian Bible, this is Holmes saying, perhaps the greatest book ever written, truly points a way to eternal values. But there are many other Bibles, all of which, taken together, weave the story of spiritual truth into a unified pattern. And here he will be thinking of things like the Quran, the Vedas, the Upanishads, the Avesta from Zoroastrianism, and so on and so forth. He says, all people have had their Bibles, as all have had their religions. All have pointed a way to ultimate values, but can we say that any of them has really pointed the way? It is unreasonable to suppose that any one person or people encompasses all truth, and that they alone can reveal the way of life to others. Taking the best from all sources, religious science has access to the highest enlightenment of the ages. And here we would include people like the Buddha and so on and so forth. Religious science reads everyone's Bible and gleans the truths therein contained. It studies all people's thoughts and draws from each that which is true, as Ernest Holmes defines true, without criticism, without judgment, but by true discrimination. That which is true and provable may be discovered and put to practical use. What is truth? Where may it be found, and how may it be used? These are the questions that intelligent people ask. They find their answers in the study of religious science. Yes, he's biased in what he did. Shorn of dogmatism, free from superstition, and always ready for greater illumination, religious science offers the student of life the best that the world has so far discovered. It has been well said that, quote, religions are many, but religion, capital R, is one. The varying faiths of humankind are unnumbered, but the primal faith of the race is today, as of old, the one faith, capitalized, as instinctive reliance upon the unseen, which we have learned to call God, the divine, the all, spirit, and so on and so forth. So that really kind of tells you where religious science comes from, at least where Ernest Holmes was in compiling all this together. So in other words, it's what's called a syncretic religion, that it takes what it believes is the best from all other religions and philosophical beliefs, not just religions, and puts them into one bound volume, which is this, the Science of Mind textbook, which has got within it about 650 pages, give or take. So that's a brief introduction. And if you want to leave off at this stage, fine. But if you choose to hang around and listen to the rest of the reading, remember it's primarily aimed at people who are already practicing to some extent religious science or science of mind in particular, and new thought in general, because there's lots of related systems out there like unity, divine science, the one in Japan, and so on. The first quote that Reverend Raymond gives us is, "The master has failed more times than a beginner has tried, even tried." This, I think, is really encouraging. It is to me, it's encouraging. Why? Because if he says the master's failed more times than the beginner has even tried, it tells you that the way to success is often through failure. Remember Edison with his attempting to produce the light bulb, the incandescent bulb, which has now been outlawed, of course, because we have better systems. And rumor has it he tried 1,000 or so times. How many times did he try? Nobody knows, but it was a heck of a lot. So it's this kind of philosophy. And I think it gives me hope, because if I try and do something and fail, hey, I now say, what can I learn from it? Ernest Holmes in Ideas of Power says, "This is the very foundation of our philosophy, that God the divine is all there is." And when we use that word God, we mean the cause, capital C, the invisible intelligence, the divinity, the omnipresent knowingness, spirit, life, truth, reality. That is what we mean by God. And when we say that God is everywhere, we mean that God is in us, in each other, in this flower, in the interspaces of the universe. There is nothing but the divine. He says God, I said the divine. And that, as I said, was in Ideas of Power. In his edition, it's page 113, paragraph 3. And as I said, this reading is primarily intended for those in religious science, but you can take from it some stuff as well. Have you ever noticed this trend that when someone asks, what is religious science, or what is the science of mind, and what are centers for spiritual living, the initial response is to say, well, it's not. Yes, we want to make sure people know that we are not Scientology. Absolutely not. We're not Christian in a certain sense, or at least not that type of Christian. Says, understood? So, yes, lots of us in Science of Mind are Christians, but we're Christians in the sense that we follow the teachings of Jesus of Nazareth, and we don't ascribe to a lot of the dogma that's been developed over the millennia. And yet, would this same approach work at a restaurant? Is this a good example? I don't know, but it works. What's the special for the day? Well, it's not this and it's not that. Okay, so what is it? In the doctor's office, your blood work came back, and it's not this and it's not that. Okay, so what is it? Bold Basics issue us an invitation to get clear on what it is that we believe, what it is that we practice, and what are we doing within this teaching. He says, let's agree to revisit the following materials. The first 4 chapters of the Science of Mind textbook, the one I just showed you. The Declaration of Principles, Ernest Holmes produced 10 core principles, and the global vision for CSL, Centers for Spiritual Living, a world that works for everyone. Once revisited, let's ask how we can encapsulate those concepts into 2 or 3 sentences. And he says, next, let's engage in conversation with others in our community, in our centers, our churches, and practice talking about what this teaching is and what it involves, leaving out what it's not. This wax on, wax off practice gives us the gift of deepening our understanding, which then deepens the practice and the application of who we are and what we do. And as I said, this is intended primarily for people in religious science. But you could apply it to pretty well any aspect of life. You know, if you're a member of an art society, well, you could say, well, it's not like Picasso and it's not like Constable, but people want to know, well, what is it like, right? And if you study music, well, what kind of music is it that you're studying? Maybe I would be interested, maybe I wouldn't. Opera. Oh yeah, I like opera. And other people say, no, I don't like opera, I like rock. You know what I mean? So it's just really a basic reminder to people practicing religious science. Are you really, when somebody asks you what it is, tell them what it is and don't beat about the bush and tell them what it's not. Is it a great lesson? I think it's a lesson in going internally and saying, what does religious science mean to me? What does science of mind mean to me personally? What is it to me personally? How do I describe my religious science? And you could say the same thing with Christians or Muslims. You know, a Muslim could say, well, what kind of Muslim am I? Well, I'm a Sufi. What is a Sufi? A Sufi is the mystical aspect of Islam. Or I'm a Christian. What kind of Christians are you? Well, I am Eastern Orthodox. What kind of Eastern Orthodox are you? Well, I'm actually Russian Orthodox or Greek Orthodox. So I think it's a fair question. And people, the real thing is this, I come back here. People get complacent about what they're doing and they start sometimes to get embarrassed explaining to people exactly what their belief systems are, whether it's religious, political, or whatever. I think the science of mind has got a lot to offer the world. And therefore, that's why I'm a minister in Science of Mind, Centers for Spiritual Living. That's why I became a practitioner and then later on a minister, because I like to teach it. Speaking of which, if you want to know more about our form of prayer in Science of Mind, starting on the third Monday in July, we'll have a course starting. I will be teaching it and I have an assistant helping me teach it. But I'll give you more information about that as we get a little closer to the time. But if you want to know more about how we pray, how we meditate, this is the class for you. So I'll tell you more about that later. We did get an affirmation today. Today I return to the power and awareness of the basics. I bring that understanding to my daily experiences. And let's face it, you can use that, whatever you're talking about. It doesn't have to be religious science. In this case, it is, but it really doesn't have to be. It could be anything that you are deeply involved in. And I know some of you are involved in lots of things. For me, it could be Toastmasters. What does Toastmasters believe in, right? Take a deep breath. Just let it go slowly. And now, just try and put everything aside and think, how, as I do, how can I use what I've heard today to my best advantage for the rest of this day and going on into the future? How can I use one thing? One thing. What is that one thing that you can take away from this? And you have to listen to part of this again. Fine. What's one thing you can take away from it? What is one thing I can take away? That is to always be truthful about my beliefs. And with that, I will see you tomorrow. Reverend Lisa will see you 9 o'clock tomorrow morning if you want to tune into her. And as I said, I'll be back tomorrow at 5 p.m. Central Time. So until then, namaste